Owner of Gerald's Donuts, a serial entrepreneur, just wrapped up a term of the Parish Council. How many years did you do on council?
So I did a total of 12.
Total of 12. You're on multiple boards here in St. Bernard Parish and a real estate investor. Take me back a little bit. How did you get started before all that?
So first, thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate being here. You know, how I got started in government, real estate, business, which one you want?
All of it.
All right. So at an early age, I realized that, you know, there's a couple of ways to make money and be successful in life. And I chose the path of work harder than everybody else, right? That's what I knew. I was a hustler by definition, by mean, and I chased the money every day of my life. But I started when I was 17 years old, and I drove up to Magnolia and Felicity Street. There was a little meat market for rent. And I walked in there, I had $1,000 to my name. It was in my pocket. I have no banking account. It was just in my pocket. I walked in there and I met a guy, his name was Mike Jingo. And he's about 3 years older than me. Him and his dad was in there, heavy Italian guys. And I said, look, I'm here to talk about renting the meat market. This thing's fully stocked with meat. It's fully stocked. Don't know how I'm gonna pay for any of this, right? And I sit in there and I talked to Frank and Mike for about an hour, and I said, what do you think? Can you think you can rent me the meat? He says, well, they got $2,200 worth of meat in there. You know, I said, well, look, I got $1,000 to my name. I'll give you the $1,000. Can you finance me the rest of the meat? I could pay you $50 a week. And we make a handshake deal. We never signed a piece of paper. There was no lease agreement. There was none of that stuff. And I gave him my $1,000 of cash and I left. And I'm driving home and I'm thinking to myself, all right, well, we got to open up tomorrow. So I get up the next day, I go to Orleans, get a business license, show up, and start selling meat. It was a very good business. Like, it was very good. It lasted about 7 months. It was great. And but I learned a lot, right? I learned how to go in. I learned how to negotiate a little deal. I did a few little things that kind of got my feet wet. And we did make some money. We had a partner, and it went south with a partner that put up no money, right? I put up all the money, $1,000, and I have a partner. And it was a good business, but it taught me so much at a young age. I was 17 years old, my wife was 15, and we were up in the city working that meat market every single day, right? So it was a huge lesson in my life. It taught me a lot of what to do and a lot of what not to do. And so from there, you know, I went to work, I hung sheetrock, did metal stud framing, worked for somebody for a couple of years, and there's no end to that. Like, you're gonna look 90 and you're gonna be 40 sitting on somebody's steps waiting for a paycheck. That wasn't gonna be me. So I quit that and I started selling pages and cell phones off my belt because I couldn't afford to like open a store. So I bought a few, put them on my belt, go around, sell the pages. That turned into 5 locations, you know, of Pages stores. That was back in 97, maybe 96, 97. And then cell phone PrimeCo came out with the prepaid phone and Pages just went away, right? So here we go, back to bankrupt. Start over again. And we owned Wagner's Meat on Martin Luther King and South Claiborne. We mustered our way up into that one. And Katrina took us out of that. But while I had Wagner's Meat, I did real estate back then. So I used to buy properties off of the REO list, right? The repo list. And I mean, I don't do that today, but back then the repo list was so good to work with. It was so easy to work with back then. You was just hitting the subprime market. I mean, you could get a loan if you had a pulse, you know? I mean, it wasn't like it is today. And we bought a bunch of real estate. We bought and sold, we bought and kept. And then Hurricane Katrina hit and back to bankrupt. So it got a little exhausting at that point. And after Katrina, I brought my life back to St. Bernard Parish. Before St. Bernard Parish, my life was in New Orleans. My life wasn't here. We brought our life back to St. Bernard Parish. We opened up professional building supplies, kind of like a little mini Home Depot. And it was a big business. It was really, really great. And St. Bernard Parish government passes an ordinance that says they can't rent to blood relatives. You can only rent to blood relatives. So all of you guys, all the investors, dry up, stop doing business. So they was making rentals and buying property and remodeling like crazy after Katrina. And when that happened, back to bankrupt. Yeah, bankrupt got me a couple times. But I got into government, you know, for that reason, that like this can't happen this way. Somebody's got to step up and do something, say something. You can complain or you can go run for office, and that's where I was at. So I ran for office. We opened up the Jungle, the pizza and laser tag place in the same building.
I know I worked there.
Few people in here went there. And that didn't work out. You know, that was a couple of years, that didn't work out. And then we got into Gerald's Donuts, and that's where we're at today. But I know this. I know that owning a business, there's no retirement for that small business owner. There's no exit plan for the shopkeeper. You know, when he sells his business, that is his retirement. And let's be honest, we sell Gerald's Donuts for $1 million. I can't live the rest of my life with $1 million. My wife got the Amazon truck at my house every day. Mike, I'm not gonna make it with $1 million. So I said I wanted to go back into real estate, and I just eased my way back in. You know, this time was a little different. We had a little money behind us this time. It was a different setup to get in, and it turned out to be really successful. So that's kind of a summary for you of how I got here today.
That's great. That's fantastic. Good story. And there seemed to be a common theme, right? Roadblock after roadblock, or failure after failure, depending on how you want to define it. Let's go down that road, right? Like, how do you see failure, or having gone through it so many times, do you have a different perspective or a different vision of it now than you did when you were starting out?
Well, after you go through failure a few times, you learn that failing isn't failing. Quitting is failing, right? Fail stands for first attempt in learning. If every professional sports team, when they lost, thought they failed, it'd be over. No, you learn something and you bring it next week, right? So same thing, when I failed, I had to take from that, what did I do wrong? Because you're gonna ask me about a book later, and I'm gonna reveal it to you now. When you read Extreme Ownership, okay, if anybody ever read Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, you'll learn. Failure is not in your vocabulary. You have got to keep pushing the door. You've got to keep going. You get up every time, you put your boots on, you go back and you outwork everybody. You either have a lot of money or you outwork everybody. That's it. That's the two ways to do it. And I outworked everybody. That's what got me where I'm at today. Yeah,
and circling back in those early days, I guess give us some perspective of, were you a trust fund baby? Did you come from money? You know, mom and dad just handed you the keys to the Gerald's kingdom, or like what was life growing like?
I'll tell you what, I can go kiss my parents today if that was the story. But I come from a really, really poor household. I wore my brother's hand-me-down clothes to school. I did quit school and get my GED. I made it to the 9th grade, but in my house, we didn't talk about going to college. We didn't talk about investing in real estate. We talked about go get a job and help your mom pay the bills. That's what we talked about, and that's exactly what I did. I started working around 13 years old. A bunny bread man used to pick me up at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd help him deliver bread. He'd drop me off at school. I'd go to school till 2:30 at Chalmette High, and I'd walk from Chalmette High to Tony's Po' Boys and wash dishes for $2 an hour till 10 o'clock at night and repeat. That was every day.
Wow.
So I come from a really poor household, but I'm one of 5. When you're one of 5 kids, anybody has a bunch of siblings, you know you're fighting for your seat at the table every day. You fighting for your value every day. And that is a life lesson that you can bring with you into the next world, into the business world, into the investing world, is fighting for your seat at the table every day. So coming from that poor household, I think it gave me an advantage. If you want to know the truth, I wasn't spoiled. I never had everything I wanted when I was a kid, but my mother made sure I had everything I needed as a kid. You know what I mean? We had a roof over our head. We had rice-a-roni for dinner so many nights, you know, and that's how I grew up, a poor kid who just was determined. I wasn't going to live that life my whole life. I couldn't do it.
There's a really good book, David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, that talks about that, about the perceived weakness ending up being a strength, right? So like that upbringing, if you were a trust fund baby and parents gave you a check for $1 million, you probably wouldn't be as successful as you are today, right? So it's a good lesson for all of us that we don't need to be handed, right, like a ton of cash or a ton of a huge network or all these different advantages in life to be successful, right?
No, that's correct. And look, you can invest in real estate. You don't have to start off with $1 million.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to start off with determination. You have to start off with no quitting. I don't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to really learn how to negotiate, because I've negotiated a lot of deals that were not good for me. You know, when you're just hungry for it, and you go sit at the table and they say your rent's gonna be $5,000 a month. You say, I don't care how much the rent is. I'm gonna take this deal because I know I'm gonna be a millionaire selling these monkey heads on a stick. I know I'm gonna make a ton of money. And you know, but you gotta learn when you do that, you negotiated a bad deal for yourself.
Yeah.
And so you have to learn that the biggest thing in any business, real estate, no matter what it is that tool of negotiating. And if you don't read books on negotiating, you're cheating yourself, because you can read 10 books. You only got to pick up one thing from each book. You don't need to learn the whole book. Just pick up one thing from every book you read, and you'll get there.
Yeah, that's good. And I remember hearing, I don't know if it was on a podcast or what, but somebody said you could pretty much pick a topic and read 3 books, and you're going to be smarter on that topic than 90% of the population.
Facts.
So negotiating is a good example, right? You could read, what's the one, the former FBI guy, Chris Voss. You could read his book and probably 2 others, and you'll know more about negotiating than 99% of the population. Let's hone in a little bit on real estate. So what kind of real estate are you talked about in the past, but currently what kind of real estate are you involved in or looking for, or what's that look like today?
So currently I'm invested in residential rentals, right? A holding company with residential rentals. I stay away from commercial for a couple of reasons, being a tenant most of my life. You know, commercial, a triple net lease is nice, but when I go out of business, you're out of business. And it's really hard to rent that spot for $4,000 a month when you know your note on that's so high on commercial. So I stay in residential for a couple of reasons. I feel like I don't do any Section 8. I have none of my properties on Section 8. I got 2 apartments in Metairie, some apartments in Kenner, and some stuff down here. And the reason I don't do Section 8 is the tenants pretty much tear your place up, and you kind of get at a disadvantage as a landlord. But let me tell you why that's a great reason to be in residential rentals. Is Section 8 and government subsidy for housing will always be there. So if it came down to losing my investment or going Section 8, I'm going Section 8, right? I'm not gonna lose my investment over that. So it's a great fallback. Commercial don't have the fallback there.
Yeah.
So I like and I don't have a lot, you know, I think I have 30 something doors maybe right now, 30 to 40 doors right now. So I don't have enough to where I feel like I could buy commercial and cash flow it if it was all the way empty. And that's the only way I'm gonna be comfortable buying commercial, is if I can cash flow it even if it's not rented. So I think commercial, you know, look, you get into Winn-Dixie buildings or something like that, yeah, you're gonna make some money, but you have to be really disciplined because it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of expense. You know, those landlords, they might have to spend $200,000 for a roof tomorrow, and you have to be prepared to have that money. So for me, I like to keep it residential. It's an easier buy, it's an easier loan.
Yeah.
The requirements are less than commercial, so it's a great way to get in and start. And I think once you build that portfolio, then you can move to commercial one day.
Yeah, that's good. And I think you have a unique perspective, and this is something I'm really excited about in this conversation. You have a unique perspective with both business and real estate, right? And I'm curious to get your thoughts on having a lot of experience with both, right? And what do you like about each one? Do you like one better than the other? Do they supplement each other, or how do they feed into each other or benefit each other? But can you talk through a little bit about being both a business owner that's generating active income as well as a real estate investor?
Cash is king, right? So if you could build a cash flow, build a cash flow. I mean, cash flow is king. And let's be honest, to get into the real estate business, it's really tough without a whole lot of money behind you. For a poor kid coming from a house like I came, I would have never made it into real estate without my cash flow. So I do think it's important. And the problem with the cash flow, the problem with the business is, I said it earlier, there's no retirement there. There's nothing at the end of that. You sell your business and that's what you got. But when you use that business as a vehicle, understand that it's a stepping stone to the next level, and you use it that way, then that's how it complements each other. So Gerald's Donuts put the seed money in the bank for the real estate. And now we have 2 maintenance guys that work for me full time, and I use them at Gerald's and I use them on real estate. I use them for whatever. I use them on my house if it happens to be that. But because of the dynamic of both, we can afford both of those guys on a weekly basis. I couldn't afford them with just the real estate, and I couldn't afford them with just Gerald's. So that dynamic works out good together, and I'm gonna tell you, it's a lot easier to start a donut shop than it is to start a real estate company. It's just that simple. It is easier to start a business, but I've been through 10, 15 different businesses before I had the successful one, so you gotta just have the will to not give up. I mean, I could have quit at any one of those failures. I could have quit at any one of those bankruptcies, but you gotta keep pushing against that door and pushing against that door until it opens up.
Yeah, that's good. And I think a lot of people get caught in the trap. I know I did, right? I'm gonna get a couple of doubles, right? And they're gonna be bringing in $1,000 aside, and my mortgage is only this. I'm gonna have this X amount of cash flow, right? And I think we get caught up into the trap, whether it's from social media gurus or influencers, whatever, that it's almost a get-rich-quick scheme, right? Like residential real estate. Oh, buy a double, and then you're gonna have this money. When in reality, some of us, it maybe takes a little bit longer to realize that that's not the case, right? It's very much a get-rich-slow scheme, not a get-rich-quick scheme. So I think that that's something important that you pointed out, that the businesses are giving you the cash flow. The real estate's giving you the long-term wealth building and appreciation, right? And cash flow as well.
Well, what you got to think about is, you said it's like real estate's a get-rich-quick scheme. It is definitely the long game.
Yeah.
Right? Because what is get rich? Let's talk about what is rich. Because I spent a lot of my life doing it wrong. I spent a lot of my life thinking I had to make a lot of money to be wealthy. Right? I had to build a big income to be wealthy. That's not true. Wealth is assets. Wealth ain't cash. And that's what I had confused in my life for a long time. I chased cash. Well, cash just goes away too easy. Just one little thing happens in your life and all your cash is gone. But them assets don't go away that easy. They stay there.
Yeah.
So that's where the wealth is. The wealth is an asset building. It's not in cash flow. It's an asset building.
Right.
Took me a long time to learn that, Mike.
Absolutely. No, that's a good lesson.
A couple bankruptcies later.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good. And so one thing I'm wondering, I know you're obviously very busy, right? You've done a lot in terms of businesses, but you're also still very active. And so you're doing Gerald's, right? I know just kind of, I guess, winding down on the council side, right? But still very involved. How do you manage your time doing so many things, plus being a dad, a husband, all these things? How do you manage work-life balance? Does that even exist? Talk to us about how you manage your time.
Let's start with priorities. Right, you got to prioritize what is important in your life. Easy to get confused. Been confused on priorities many a times, and probably will be again in my life. For a long time, my companies were my priorities, and I neglected my wife and I neglected my child to make sure my business was going to get up and running. Almost got a divorce, been down that road because I had no time for nobody. And you just have to prioritize what is important to you. So for me, how do I manage it? I've built a really good team. And you have to take time and you have to build a team, because if you don't do that, you will not have time. A lot of people in life have one of two. You either have a lot of money and no time, or a lot of time and no money. But when you can grab time and money, that's called lifestyle. Yeah. Right? That's what a lifestyle is. One without the other is no good.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out your priorities. You have to know how to delegate. Right, and a big transition. That's a hard transition. When I used to go to Gerald's every night and cut the donuts, I was the guy cutting the donuts. I worked 15, 16 hours a day into the morning, made sure everything was right, paid my bills, went to the bank, did everything, went home, sleep for 3 hours, get back up, go make donuts. It's real hard to get out of that cycle.
Yeah.
That cycle, because all of a sudden I hire somebody to cut the donuts. Man, he ain't cutting the donuts right. He ain't did this right. and you can't understand how that works, but you can't grow if you want 100% of what you're gonna do. Yeah. Gerald's. If I go work at Gerald's, I'm gonna squeeze 100% of profit out of Gerald's. If I let Mike run Gerald's, I'm gonna squeeze 70% of profit. I've got to be willing to give up 30% of my profit to go open another Gerald's, or I'm never getting that. Right? That's where I'm going to be the rest of my life. I'm never going to move past that point. There's a little bit to give up for that growth. And that's the risk, in my opinion, that's the risk. But building that team is what's gained my freedom, and is what have given me the time to do politics and be involved in my community. And how important is that? You don't realize how much government affects business. We talk about it. We need our government to be successful. Yeah. We need these guys to do a good job. We need that to be on the right path. Because when I go to Slidell or Jefferson or Hammond and I want to do business with people and I say I'm from St. Bernard and my government's on the news every week like a bunch of yahoos, right? They're like, I don't know about that guy. And that's their first impression of you, is where you're from. So we need these people to be successful. And that's why it was so important for me to get involved in government in my mind. And I'm going to be honest, I wouldn't change one day of that if I could go back.
So I look around, I see a lot of different experience levels, right? I see some people that have probably done more deals than I can ever imagine, and some people just starting out, right? For the person who is just starting out, we talked about business, we talked about real estate. Is there one track you would recommend somebody just starting out to start with, or try and do both, or should they do real estate first and then business, business and real estate? Any advice in terms of that?
Well, I mean, that's going to depend on your position in life and what's available to you of where you're going to start, right? I started in the business world because it's what I knew. It's what I grew up in. It's what I knew how to do. The real estate world didn't come to me until later on in life, but when I started to learn a little bit about real estate. So I did business first, and once you grab a hold of a cash flow, it's hard to undo that. It's hard to get away from a cash flow. So I stayed with the business, and I would probably say get that first, because even if you failed over here, your cash flow could pretty much pick you back up and correct you. If you had your priorities right, and if you learned a lesson from that fail, you could pick back up and keep going. So me, I would say it's probably smart to do the business side first.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people that have done the real estate side first and been very successful. And I guess it depends on where your start is and what you have to start with.
And I think at some point you probably don't have a choice but to go into the business side, right? Because I started on the real estate side, house hacked, and used every possible owner-occupied loan for low down payments and all that stuff, and then hit a wall to say, all right, my wife's not letting me move anymore. I don't have 20% down. So at some point you almost have to shift to some sort of business, right? Whether it's donuts or wholesaling or realtor or title company, like whatever you want to do. I think most people hit that wall and end up going the business side at some point.
Got a great story for you. The very first house I bought was on Galvez Street. It was half burnt down. All right, and I'm in business. I got my little pager and cell phone store. I got really no cash to buy this house, and I got to put 20% down. So what I did is I ordered $50,000 of these prepaid Suncom phone cards. Okay, they give me $50,000 worth. They give you 45 days to pay them. So I had 45 days with their $50,000, right?
Oh, wow.
I took the cards, went and sold them to all the other phone stores to get the cash, because I couldn't knock customers out. It took me 2 months to sell them.
Yeah.
So I got the $50,000 in cash, bought the house, right? Fixed the house, then put a mortgage on the house, and I was about 20 days late paying for the phone cards, but I did make the payment back. Like, I did get it back, and that's a very risky way to do it, because I guess I could have got hung. But when you're hungry, I told you, you do stuff that's really not beneficial to you sometimes, because you're so hungry for that deal. You find a piece of property, you find something, you're like, man, if I don't buy this, there's never going to be another deal like this again. We can't pass this up. It's too good. That's the ones you need to pass up. That's the ones you need to walk away from. Trust me. That's the ones that are going to get you every single time.
Yeah.
And learn it. And as you get older, you learn patience. You learn to slow down. You learn not to run in. Story of the two bulls. We won't tell that story, but it's the story of the two bulls. I'll tell it to you later, Mike.
All right. So speaking of lessons, what is one lesson that, had you learned earlier in your career or in your life, would have made a significant impact in your trajectory or success or your life?
Man, there's so many. There's just so many, Mike, that I think the one thing I wish I would have had when I was younger was patience. I wish I would have slowed down when I negotiated. I wish I would have took more time in making my decisions. And I wish I would have acted instead of reacted. When something popped up that was for sale or was going on, I reacted on it quick, and a lot of that ended up in loss. So patience would probably be the biggest thing I would tell some of these younger guys, to just slow it down a little bit. It's going to happen. If this deal don't happen, there's 100 more tomorrow. Yeah. You can find deals every day, everywhere. We in one city. We in one city. It's a whole country out here. We can go to Dallas. They got deals there. We can go to Chicago. They got deals there. We can go to New York. They got deals there. Yeah. There's deals everywhere. But we isolate and we blind ourselves into thinking if we don't take this deal, it's over. So you have to learn how to slow down. You have to learn how to get advice from your peers. Bounce it off a few people around you. Somebody might give you something interesting. I can tell you this, if you think you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
That's a fact. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. Time for you to move on. I want to be the dumbest guy in the room, right? Because that gives me a lot more to learn and a lot more growth that I can have in my life.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Here's one I'm really excited about. So if you woke up tomorrow with $500 in your pocket and your cell phone, new city, you don't know anybody, how are you going to build your way back? What are you going to do? What's the first couple things you're going to do to build your way back? You got your cell phone, $500.
I'm going to call Jordan and we're going to open up an Amazon Prime store. No, I don't know. $500, I'm in a new city and I got my cell phone. I am going to go and buy myself a really nice put together outfit and I'm going to play the part and I'm going to walk into probably a cabinet store is where I would start. Okay. In a cabinet store. Cabinets is a very, why are you laughing? It's a very, very, very lucrative, high markup item that I can go sell you a set of cabinets. You're going to give me half down so I can go buy my product. And I'm going to probably make $30,000 in my first 2 weeks. And that's how I'm going to start. But one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to outwork everybody else that sells cabinets. And that's what the key to the success is.
Yeah. So if you're a cabinet maker, wow, be on the lookout. Richie's coming for you.
You got some stuff that you make a profit on, right? You could sell these waters and you can make $0.25 a bottle and you got to sell a ton of them to make any money. I can sell you one kitchen and make $5,000 and I can be done in 3 days and I'm finished and you finished and move on about my life. So I'm going to find that item. I'm going to find the item where I can go maximize my profits and use none of my money to start. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. I like the sales approach, right? It's probably the easiest way to get in where the hard work translates to more money, you know what I mean? Versus getting a job somewhere where you're kind of boxed in, right?
Yeah, I never was good at the whole job thing. I had like I had a few jobs in my, not when I was a kid. I mean, when I was a kid, obviously I worked at Popeyes and all kind, wherever I could, to be honest. Yeah. But, I never was good at the whole W-2 side of life. It never did satisfy me.
Why do you think that is?
It's too slow paced. My brain is too fast and I think of stuff too fast. Yeah. And it's a disease sometimes. Sometimes I want to slow, look, I go on a cruise with my wife. I get off the boat. I'm on the phone with the bank. I'm on the phone with my employees. I'm trying to make sure the donuts were lined up right and my rent was paid. And she's like, come on, we're going to the beach. And I'm like, yeah, I'm coming in. And I got all the internet packages on the boat because I got to make sure everything's right. It's being a workaholic. It's being a workaholic and learning how to relax. Learning how to shut that off is something I struggle with every single day of my life, is learning how to slow down and relax. So there's that element, right? Because that's an important element. Yeah. If you can't turn it off and go spend time with your wife and kid, right? Divorce is on its way. You might not have it today, but it is on its way. Yeah. And so it's all a balance. And it took me some time to learn how to balance. It took me to almost be divorced. It took me some bankruptcies to get to where I'm at today and approach a situation the way I approach it today. I don't approach it with a reaction. You can bring me anything you want. I'm gonna say, talk to you about that tomorrow. Let me sleep on that. Because who knows? And I might call Mike. I might call Jordan. I might call Kerry. I might call somebody and say, hey, what do you think about this? What I got going on? Tell me what you think. And one of them might give me the secret sauce, right? One of them might give me the answer that I was looking for. So I think just slowing down and learning how to approach a little bit differently is the value of where I'm at.
Yeah, and we can stay in that vein. I think part of it too is knowing yourself, right? Like you're a driver. You're somebody that's 100 miles an hour and it takes intentional effort to take your foot off the gas and slow down, right? Whereas somebody else might say, hey, I'm more of a coaster, right? Like I set the cruise control, I'm sitting on a beach drinking Mai Tais, you know what I mean, hanging out, where they may need to be more intentional about pumping the gas, right, and wanting to go. So I think part of that is kind of knowing yourself, knowing your tendencies, knowing your weaknesses, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of people that won't risk $500 on a business that could be $1 million business because they're scared they're going to lose that $500. There are people that reserved in life. They will not take a risk. Steve Harvey talks a lot about this cliff everybody's on and they jump off. Anybody ever heard that story from Steve Harvey, right? You jump off the cliff, take a shot, take a risk, and sometimes the parachute opens and sometimes it don't. And everybody says, well, I'm jumping off the cliff because my chute might not open. But what those people don't see, because they pinned back here, is they don't see that when I hit the ground and splat, I get up, I dust my shoes off, I climb back up the cliff, and I jump again. I'm not dead because my chute didn't open. You know, that's the part that Steve Harvey don't tell you, is you can jump off the cliff more than once.
Yeah.
It's not a one-time shot. You can do it more than once. Failure is part of life. Failure is part of growth. Failure is part of character. Failure is what makes you who you are. If you didn't fail in life, then how do you know what success feels like? You would never know what success felt like if you never failed. So I think it's an important part, and I think everybody should almost go through that in some sort of way, because it will be the most valuable lessons you will learn when you wake up in the morning. I live on Parmigiano, and I woke up, it was June of 2009. I think I told you this story again once, but I'm gonna tell it again.
Yeah.
I woke up in June of 2009, living in a $400,000 house. I had 7 guys working in a building trying to put a business together, and I had $20 in my pocket. No banking account, that was a wrap, $20. And I get up and somebody knocks at the door, and it's energy. He says, well, we're here to turn off your lights. I'm like, oh. I don't know if you know anything about energy, but when you file bankrupt, they add another $1,000 to your deposit. So my bill's like $1,200, right? I got 20. I told the guy, I said, give me till 5 o'clock. Can you come back at 5? If I don't have it paid by 5 o'clock today, come turn it off. So I go, and I was building the Jungle, which was like a pizza and laser tag type of place. And I go in there, and I'm in the back, and I'm nailing wood for this laser tag maze, thinking to myself, what am I gonna do, what am I gonna do? I'm talking to the other little carpenter guy, because I had a guy from Michigan that was kind of helping me out on a favor. And I'm talking to him about the electric bill, and so we go to lunch, we come back, and the guy comes and says, Richie, you gotta come see this. One of the party room ceilings crashed down, right? And I'm like, oh God, can today just get any worse? Like, I don't even wanna go see this. Well, I walk in, and they got this birthday cake for me, and everybody's in there. They fooled me, right? There was nothing wrong with the room. And the guy from Michigan hands me $1,500.
Wow.
And he says, go pay your light bill. Think about that. I knew this guy for 2 months. I didn't know him my whole life. You know what I mean? Go pay your light bill. And that's why I said read the Bible. Things work out. Things happen for a reason. That business opened. It was successful for a solid year and a half. It's probably a little too early for St. Bernard after Katrina, in my opinion. But it was a really good lesson, you know, for me and my wife and my family and probably a lot of people around me. But things happen for a reason. I woke up that day with $20 and no electricity, and I went to bed with my light bill paid. Right?
Yeah.
So that's the power of determination. That's what that is, the power of determination and prayer in my mind.
Yeah, and you talked about jumping off that cliff, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine every time you climb back up that cliff, it gets easier and easier and easier, right? The first time it's gonna be really tough to climb back up. You don't think you can do it, right? But I imagine every time you jump off, hit the ground and climb back up, it probably gets a little easier, right?
It absolutely gets easier because you learn how to recognize your mistakes better. The first time you jump off the cliff and you fail, you blame everybody else. It wasn't your fault. You couldn't have failed. You're smarter than everybody. You knew what you were doing. Everybody messed you over, and that's why you failed. And that's generally the first time what you go through.
Yeah.
And until you start owning those problems and owning those mistakes and learning from them, that's when the growth starts coming. That's when you start to figure it out and you don't touch the stove twice.
That's good. So I guess we'll stay in that vein of, failure and climbing back up. What do you say to the person in the room who just jumped off the cliff for the first time?
Pull a cord.
And they splatted. They didn't pull a cord. They weren't here 2 weeks ago to hear you say pull the cord, so they splatted, right? What do you tell that person who just went through it? They're in the middle of the muck and they feel like they can never get up. There's this insurmountable cliff in front of them. Other than, persistence and determination, what advice do you give them?
Find the positive in the room. Find the positive in the room, because you're gonna need that to climb back up that cliff. You gotta find out what you did wrong and what you could have did right. That's what you gotta find out. Go educate yourself a little bit more on the topic, climb the cliff and jump. But find what you did wrong. And that's the most important part. When you fail, you have to figure out the reason why you failed so you don't do it again. Because a lot of times you'll create, they had a ballroom down here. I want to say it was called On the Rocks or The Rocks. It was the Levee, but I don't remember what it was before that. It was The Rocks, On the Rocks, and the guy that owned it, man, he loved heavy metal music. Not like Metallica that everybody can listen to, like this heavy metal music, right? And so he fails. He opens the bar. He paid $90,000 for the bar, and he puts these big heavy metal bands. And I went one night because he asked me to go, and I went in there, and I couldn't even hear. Like, it was bad. I couldn't do nothing. So I left. He didn't do well in business, and I take the place over afterwards, right? He walks out. I go in there and remake it another ballroom, and we're very successful. We did really well for 2 or 3 years, and the guy calls me up and he says, "Richie, man, listen. Lost a lot of money in this building. You think you give me an opportunity to take this back over?" I said, "You know what, man?" I said, "You buy my inventory and I'm out of here. Just give me the money for the inventory, pay me nothing for the bar, and you can take it back and make your money back. I know what that feels like. Go make your money back." He took it back. He turned it right back into a heavy metal band. And 6 months later, he was right back, and he blamed me.
I'm just curious to hear how you went through that process and how it worked.
So when I filed bankruptcy in 2009, I lost about 16 properties, right? Some of them were paid for. That stinks, okay? That stinks. But it is a process. It is a tool. And it is something you have to use when you have to use it. It's not something I would tell everybody to hurry up and go run and push the bankruptcy button just to get some relief. You gotta fight that out. You gotta fight that down to the last thread till you just can't hold on no more, and that is a last ditch effort for you, because it's definitely an eye opener for you when you go through it, because the day after you file bankruptcy, you got to open another company. You got to start over. You know what I mean? With $500 in your cell phone, that's about where you're at. Now, it takes persistence, it takes patience, it takes time, and it takes understanding. But more than all of that, you got to recognize how you got to bankruptcy. If you can't recognize how you got there, you're probably going again, right? And you have to recognize how you got to bankruptcy, and that should get you through it. Look, bankruptcy, some people think it's the easy way out. Some people think you just get to relieve all your debt. It just don't work that way. Not when you have multiple things. Look, you can't go file bankruptcy on $50,000 of debt. That ain't even worth it, right? I would never file bankruptcy on less than $1 million. It'd have to be more than $1 million for me to even consider filing bankruptcy, and that's where I was at. I was at $5 million when I filed, so it was a hard fall for me when I fell. But it humbles you, It makes you go back to the basics. It makes you go back to your principles. It makes you go back to what you know, and you going back to all of that with this new lesson, with this new don't do this, right? And do this, and do this, and don't do that, and don't do that. So it is just a lesson. It is I tell everybody I quit school in the 9th grade, but I've been in street college ever since. And I paid for some heavy semesters, right? And every time I do something and it costs me money and I lose money, that's a semester.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. That's a semester of college. I learned that lesson, and we're gonna move on in a different direction. So for me, I just think that it opens your eyes to, for one, you need to know that failure is possible. You need to know that's possible, because you get to a level where you don't think that's possible. You think you're untouchable. You think you got so much money and so much clout and so much resource that won't happen to you. Well, let me tell you something. It'll happen to you, right? One bad decision, not 21 bad decision can put you there. Slow down, have some patience, make your decisions wisely, act, don't react. That would be my advice, and that would be what the outcome is of bankruptcy, is just understand that it's not a life-ending failure. It might feel that way. It might feel like it's not against the law to owe people money. It's really not against the law to owe people money. Sometimes that just happens that way. You know what I mean? We live in America where we used to have the American dream used to be go get a job, work really hard, pay off your house, and live on your pension. Well, you can't do that these days the way you used to be able to do it in the old days. You know what I mean? The American dream is a little bit different today, and we have to adjust accordingly. We have to move accordingly. We have to teach our younger generations accordingly. I don't know if Social Security is gonna be around, but even if it is, you can live on $1,100 a month, $1,200 a month. What's your number? What is your number? Figure out your number to live on, set that goal, and that's your retirement date. No matter what it is, if it's $30,000 a month, $100,000 a month, $1 million a month, whatever that number is that satisfies you, that's what you gotta be focused in on, and that's gotta be where you're aiming.
That's good. We're running close on time. Any closing thoughts?
You know, I'm for one extremely happy to have the opportunity to come sit here and talk and get to know some people in this room that I didn't know prior to showing up here. But my closing thoughts would probably be: take your time, make smart decisions, and always know the next sentence in the conversation. And if you don't know what I mean by that, so in Jordan Roussel sitting back there, he knows me very well, and he knows when I come ask him a question, for first thing of all, I already know the answer. I know the answer to the question I'm asking. I gotta see what answer he's gonna give me, but I know pretty much what answer I'm looking for. And I know my remark to his answer before we even start the conversation. So always be a step ahead. Always plan for a step ahead. When you shoot a game of pool and you're shooting the one ball, you better know where the two ball's at, right? You better know how to position that cue ball to get to that two ball. And if you're really good, you'll know where the three ball's at. And when you position on the two, you'll position it in the position that gets you to the three. And that is life.
Yeah.
That is the strategy to life, from my perspective.
That's a good analogy. Awesome. Give it up for Richie Lewis, everybody.
Thank you all so much.